ultimate goal is to control the economic and political destiny of the human race, and it's only a few thousand people that are doing it, and don't count on their goodwill because they're involved with satanic organizations.
And satanic ritual. And
all of it, the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah. And that includes all the things that we've been, spending years exposing from various means. And Bill, we've had victims of satanic ritual abuse, the MK Ultra type mind control being used as sex slaves, and this is going to bring me into my next round of questions for you, and I think you know where I'm headed. But these people who have, from children, been taught, and of course children is what they're after, they've been taught to serve the adults, to be a part of that system, to service them sexually, to do sacrifices in some cases where people were lured to their deaths, innocent people on the street, bystanders, lured under the guise of Christian goodwill, and come to a Bible meeting and whatnot, and they get lured to a sacrifice. I mean, this is the kind of thing that they were programmed to do, that children were programmed to do to other children.
Oh, sure. I mean, you see that like in Louisiana, they had that whole Hosanna church there.
Yes.
Which was allegedly a evangelical Baptist church, and it was really a cover for a satanic cult. Mm-hmm. Well, the Hosanna church is, from what I understand from the feedback I get, is just the tip of the diabolical iceberg.
Yeah. Most of it is, like, I go by the theory, if you see one cockroach, you probably have a bunch of them somewhere.
Right. These people there's no such thing as a lone wolf cockroach, and there's really no such thing as a lone wolf Satanist.
Okay, so where I'm headed now is into the strange saga of Jeff Gannon, Johnny Gosch, Jeff Guckert, James Guckert, this progression of personalities, along with what you know about the Franklin cover-up. And if you could just, I know this is a real big topic, but if you could just kind of gently segue into it for us.
Okay, very good. This is all covered, as I say, in Satanic Crime. Basically what happened is when Jeff Gannon, who was a White House correspondent for a bogus news agency called Talon News, he was fielding very soft questions in the White House press room, and even President Bush himself called on him, and he was fielding such softball and pro-Republican questions that the other reporters started to look into who he was, and he turned out to be a male prostitute named James Guckert, who had two military-type kink gay sex websites where he promoted himself as Sergeant Bulldog, and he would offer very bizarre militant sexual services to men who would pay him. Mm-hmm. Now, what came out is that this Jeff Gannon, James Guckert, looked a lot like Johnny Gosch, who was a boy who went missing in the early 1980s. It was a big case. Even America's Most Wanted was on this, mm-hmm. John Walsh looked into this investigation. And Johnny Gosch was a boy who went missing when he was 12. Now, his mother, Noreen Gosch, claims that many years later, Johnny came back to visit him as a young adult and claimed that he was part of a satanic cult and he could not see her again because they would kill them both. He claims to have snuck away to visit her. Now, Johnny Gosch looks very much like Jeff Gannon. They have a lot of very similar physical characteristics. And the nude pictures Jeff Gannon had on his gay sex website, a lot of the markings and birthmarks that Johnny Gosch had, Jeff Gannon had. And this came out on the Internet. Now, it's really interesting because Jeff Gannon, I was on another show called A Closer Look, and this story had died down, and I started kicking it up mm-hmm. on A Closer Look hosted by Michael Corbin. And after the show, Jeff Gannon actually sent me an email threatening to sue me if I kept saying he was Johnny Gosch, which I found quite laughable because he really couldn't do that. Now, bizarrely enough, a couple weeks later, Noreen Gosch was on that same show, and Jeff Gannon actually called into the show. He denied he was Johnny Gosch, and he agreed to take a DNA test. Okay, this was in the summer of 2005. He never took that DNA test, and he has promised on several media outlets several times since then, this is well over a year, to take this DNA test with Johnny Gosch, with Noreen Gosch, to determine if he is Johnny Gosch. and he has refused to do so.
And if he is Johnny Gosch and Jeff Gannon and Jeff Guckert and James Guckert, then
you notice it's all JG.
JG, all the way through. Now,
Right.
if he turns out to be a link there, what is it saying? What is that then saying? What
that is then saying is that the federal government is running a sex slave pedophile ring, and that Satanism is part of this pedophile ring.
You beautifully said. I don't
okay,
think
that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of things like Hunter S. Thompson, the
Yes.
famous writer.
Yes.
He had huge ties to the porn industry. He was friends with the Mitchell brothers, who own the O'Farrell Theater in San Francisco. They made the big first 70s porn epic called Behind the Green Door. He was pals with them, so he had kind of a bird's eye view of the porn industry. And in his last book called Hey Rube, he claims that there is an international pedophile cult of high government and corporate officials out there. Now, after that book came out, Hunter S. Thompson allegedly committed suicide. I suspect he was murdered, and they made it look like a suicide. But the second he exposed even something remotely like what the Johnny Gosch, Jeff Gannon thing suggests, he was dead very, very quickly.
Now, would it be because he knows where some of the bodies are buried, what some of the evidence?
Definitely so. Hunter S. Thompson, there's a lot of speculation that he might have been involved with the Bohemian Grove and might have done some filming of famous people involved with sex rituals. Now, what a lot of these elite satanic groups do, like the Bilderbergers, Skull and Bones, and Bohemian Grove, is they get people in compromising sexual positions, photograph or film it, and use it as blackmail. Therefore, if you ever cross the organization, they will threaten to release these films. So, from what I understand, this is how they operate to control their membership, so no one ever will ever break off.
People wonder, well, how come it's never come out if it's really true? The answer is because to be a part of the group, to be initiated in, you have to be compromised so that you won't talk.
Oh, definitely so. And just consider that you really can't go by what the federal government says. Consider that the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover denied the existence of the Sicilian Mafia, or another satanic group.
Exactly.
Has a bizarre, initiation ritual. They denied the existence of the Sicilian Mafia for over 30 years, and it wasn't until Joe Valachi, a member of the Mafia, actually came forward and spoke before Congress that Hoover could not deny it anymore. And so as far as they go, they denied the existence of the Sicilian Mafia satanic organization, and they are now denying the existence of this elite pedophile satanic organization. Remember, the federal government of the United States is actually a minion, as is the United Nations, of this satanic pedophile cult. I believe there is a central authority. I don't know what to call it, but of the Bilderbergers, Skull and Bones, and Bohemian Grove. They have some kind of central council. People call it different things. Call it whatever you want. But there's a few people at the top of even the few thousand people who run everything who call all the shots. So and the government and the UN and the Catholic Church are all somewhat subordinate to, I don't know what to call it, the High Council.
The High Council, and
then
it gets more strange up the ladder, because you do get into the supernatural, and then there is then the link between, for example, the link between the UFO cover-up and occult ritual. Okay,
oh, definitely.
you can find all kinds of connections there.
Oh, even consider that even our own scientists like Jack Parsons, who was the inventor of solid rocket fuel, he was a disciple of Aleister Crowley's, and he used to pray to the god Pan before he fired off his rockets. Now, he's kind of the father of modern rocketry, even more so than the German rocket scientists were.
Right.
And so it's just intertwined with all of our government agencies. You don't have to look too far to find a Satanist at the top echelon of the government. Now, the whole UFO thing, my friend Brad Steiger came up with 17 different definitions and explanations for the UFO phenomenon, and at different times I've believed all of them. Frankly, I believe it's something diabolical and satanic as opposed to physically extraterrestrial.
Yeah, I agree. But also, are you aware that, for example, in witchcraft, one of the skills that they would develop in the craft is the ability to project themselves as balls of light, to travel around.
Oh, definitely. There is within witchcraft and Satanism, there are thousands and thousands of different texts which that are alchemical in nature, and different rituals to do those very, very things. Now, that's not to say that everyone who's tried these will necessarily be successful, but it's not unrealistic to think that some of them might have.
Yeah.
And as far as these, alien beings, they look like demons. They look like things that Aleister Crowley drew on the side. So I actually heard all of this from an evangelist named George Vinderman in the 70s. Who did a show called It Is Written. He's the first person I know of that said that a lot of these UFOs are actually demons or Satanists.
Are Satanists that appear. For example, we had this very bizarre case. I don't know if you recall this, Bill, of the prophet Yahweh, he called himself, and he claimed that he could pray and then the lights in the sky would appear. But to the practitioner of the dark arts, they would just laugh at that whole thing, and they know what that is. They understand it's all a conjuring. It has to do with the powers of witchcraft, magic, and so forth. And anyway, those are the secrets they're guarding. You figure, why do people die? What's behind the door? What's the big secret? And the big secret is, that Satan is real, for one thing. There really is a supernatural world there, a realm that we can't see. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would definitely agree with that. And the war we see on this earth, as you said, is just a materialization of a spiritual war.
Yeah. And
we must remember that, we're not in a very good position in this world, because the prince of this world, the guy who runs things, is actually the devil. And to have anything good in this world, you have to a certain extent, submit to his minions, who are on top of this very elite and very bizarre power structure.
Exactly. And I've been fighting this thing since I was a child myself. And most of the kids I knew that couldn't get with it, they wound up dead. And when I got my chance to go scream publicly, I've continued it and had guests on like yourself and others. By the way, had someone on that was involved with Jack Parsons, a multiple who was coming, who was, she's a little older than, say, she'd be around 60 now. And she came forward to tell the whole strange story about what went on, validating Ted Gunderson's information, by the way, of the Manhattan Beach, McMartin preschool situation, and also the involvement of the satanic elite with Jack Parsons and so forth in Los Angeles, and MK Ultra, and German scientists brought here to do mind control on this person who has been a guest here, who says she's still struggling to get free of the multiple personalities that were created and get free of this kind of bondage, but by and by she's healing. But
that's good to hear, because I deal with a lot of victims of particularly Catholic priests' sexual abuse, and many of them were involved in ritualistic sorts of things, which you can, my book Lucifer's Lodge covers a lot of that. But the damage of ritual sexual abuse seems to be much more psychologically damaging than just plain sexual abuse. And that's not to, say that people who are victims and survivors of any form of sexual abuse have it easy. It's a horrible thing, with or without the rituals. But when you add the ritual element, the people's minds, and this is just my opinion, the people's minds and spirits are broken in a far deeper way.
They're shattered, Bill. They're shattered.
Yes.
They're absolutely...
Whereas a regular molester will destroy someone's body and mind, a ritual molester will destroy someone's body, mind, and soul. And, they hit all three things. And believe me, I get phone calls and emails, almost on a daily basis from former victims, and they have really horrible lives. They're screwed up for the rest of their lives, the poor people. They never quite get over it. They get involved with drugs. They gravitate towards the most horrible things in society. Some of them become abusers themselves. So it's a kind of vampirism. That's how I describe it.
I call them the vampires because once you're one of them, you must feed. In other words, it's kind of like, okay, you're in now, you have to feed on the innocent.
Oh, I know. It's very sick, and that's not to say that all survivors of molestation become abusers, but many of them unfortunately do. And as I say, I deal with all kinds of survivors of sexual abuse. I get letters from people who are permanently committed to sexual offender wards. And I correspond with them because I want to understand them. And as I say, there's nothing worse you can... I mean, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, he would molest little boys and little girls, but he would never murder them because he knew that it was a far worse thing to molest a child than to murder one. Because if you murder a child, their suffering is over. If you molest a child, you leave them the rest of their life to ponder the horror and the evil that was done to them, and some of them